Okay. Okay, we are on our last week of the book of Ruth, and we ended last week at Ruth 3, halfway through verse 14. And just to let you know, we are going to start a new study next week. I think we're going to do 1st and 2nd Timothy. We're going to go to back to the New Testament, and we were talking today, something we did a number of years ago. We did a Passover dinner, and did the real food of the Passover. And we had planned to do this the year COVID started and didn't.
We were that close.
We were that close. And so we want you to put it on your calendars. We'll put a date out there. And those of you who are away, this is like the Christmas party, but almost just, I don't want to say more important, but just very special. We're going to have a Seder dinner, a Passover dinner, and do the food the way they did it at Jesus's time. And we will study how the meals, and I have the recipes, and we'll ask people to do the recipes. And so we're going to put it on your calendar. And
Can you do it at home? Can you tell us, like, that are on?
That would be wonderful, yeah.
There you go. Those of you home, we'll do it Zoom wise too, but we'll also do it here with the tables and the prayers and the Hebrew. And so we will make that happen.
I did it once during the Zoom, and it was really fun. I did it with Dennis Prager. So,
Oh, wow.
There you go. Oh, very good.
We'll speak the words, I won't sing them.
Thank you. Okay. So,
Mary,
yes.
where does Ruth come after?
Oh, there's a good clue. Ruth comes after Judges.
Joshua Judges,
Yes.
that little kid's song that the kids used to sing. So
Okay. So where we left off, Ruth had gone to the threshing floor with instructions by her mother-in-law Naomi to offer herself in marriage, basically, to Boaz. Do you want to say something before I
Well,
start?
a couple of things. Boaz tells her, I'll do everything that you ask. And you have to notice from that she is clearly asking. This is a marriage proposal. There's so much controversy, and there shouldn't be, but there's so many people that want to make a big deal out of the scene on the threshing floor. And one of the things that occurred to me this week, there's a scene in the New Testament where they lower the guy through the roof down to Jesus, and Jesus, all the important people, the Pharisee leaders, are up front like they love to be. And Jesus turns to this guy and he says, your sins are forgiven. And they go nuts. They just have a fit. And he says, let me ask you, which is easier to say? Your sins are forgiven, or rise and walk? And they said, well, it's easy to say your sins are forgiven. And he turns to the man and he says, rise and walk. And he does. And the message that they're supposed to get from this, if I can say this, I could say the other. I'm able to say your sins are forgiven. Well, in this case with Boaz and Ruth, the question that I would love to ask some of these people in the commentaries is because the whole thing about marriage, is it easier to say the words I do, or to make a commitment and stick with it for a lifetime? And you know the answer to that. It's this idea that she's on the threshing floor. This was a marriage proposal. I mean, she didn't go there for a one-night stand. But people go through wedding ceremonies and don't really stick with it. And this, you see the commitment that's made. I don't know exactly at what moment, but it's understood. And Boaz says, as I mentioned, I will do what you ask. And it's clear she is asking. This is a marriage proposal, and it's all on the up and up. I mean, the fact that he is a kinsman redeemer, he is a Goel, that's within his ability, his right to do. The one thing I got wrong, though, in these early chapters, and I kind of knew it, but I had lost it, this levirate marriage, where when a husband dies, his brother then takes the woman for his wife and has a child to keep the brother's line going. That's not the same thing as Goel. Goel is able to redeem land and some other stuff. But what's happened is the levirate marriage fails, because in situations like this where there is no brother, what do you do? I mean,
Remember, Naomi had no other sons, and that's why she said to the girls, go back home, because there could be no levirate marriage.
That's right, there are no more brothers. And so what they've done is sort of adopt this custom. In levirate marriage, the brother is supposed to marry the widow. He is supposed to. But they've brought this custom that allows the kinsman redeemer, the goel, to serve that same purpose. Anytime you're dealing with the Jews, it's complicated. But the point is, Boaz is not exactly, it's not mandatory for him to take Ruth as his wife, or for this other kinsman redeemer to do that. Goel is able to do it, and it becomes important as we go through the rest of the story. So That's all.
So I'm going to start at verse 14, and so it says, so she lay down, and that would be Ruth. So she lay down at the feet until morning, but she got up before anyone else could recognize her. Then Boaz said, do not let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor. And he told her, bring the shawl you are wearing and hold it out. When she did so, he shoveled 6 measures of barley into her shawl. Then he went into the city.
And so we don't know exactly how big the measures are. This could be as much as 60 pounds of grain, but it's a size of, well, but then again, when you look at how much she gleaned, it's this, you don't know if it's the same measure, but what this is a message to Naomi. And you have to go back last week where he tells her, you've shown, hesed, you've shown this great kindness, because by choosing him rather than going after some young man, Naomi also will be taken care of. That's by going this goel route. So Ruth is this very exceptional person. She takes care. I mean, she chooses a path that solves everybody's problems. And so what Boaz does, putting this grain, that's a message to Naomi. That's a sign of good faith, not to Ruth, but Ruth is going to carry this home, and Naomi is going to see his sign. This is a sign of good faith that Boaz is going to take Ruth as his wife, as long as this other guy doesn't take his right. So he's letting Naomi know, I'm not sending you home empty-handed. I'm sending this home as a message to Naomi.
When Ruth returned to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked her, how did it go, my daughter? Then Ruth told her all that Boaz had done for her. And she said, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, for he said, do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Wait, my daughter, said Naomi, until you find out how things go, for he will not rest unless he has resolved the matter today.
And again, it's partly, though, because of this sign. She knows who and what Boaz is, and she's very confident this man is not going to get cold feet. He's not going to rest on this. This is the kind of guy who's going to deal with this today, one way or the other. It's a pretty neat statement about Boaz as well.
Chapter 4. Meanwhile, Boaz went to the gate and sat down there. Soon the kinsman redeemer of whom he had spoken came along, and Boaz said, come over here, my friend, and sit down. So we went over and sat down.
You wouldn't think there's a whole lot to be said about, once again, a short thing like this. Business is transacted at the city gate.
And we've learned that several of our
We saw it in the last study. We saw, so a lot of the time, even a king, and these kings are sort of small affairs sometimes, but they would go out to the city gate to adjudicate matters that are in dispute. The city gate is where stuff happens. And so people are going to pass by there. But it makes it sound like he goes to the city gate, and the guy, it just happens, the guy he's looking for comes by. And the people of this time absolutely would have seen this as God's hand is in this. He doesn't just happen by. This is meant to be. And the funny thing is, the guy shows up, and Boaz says, Come over here, and your translation probably says, come over here, friend. In the Hebrew, there's a term. Did you write it down? It almost is sort of a
Yes,
rhyme.
so-and-so. Oh, I
Well-
didn't write the other one, sorry, I just wrote.
Anyway, it literally means so and so or such and such. What that tells you is, remember, this is a story. I mean, it's historical, but the guy's name is unimportant. We don't need to know who the senior Goel was. And so in the story, the way it's written in Hebrew is literally, come over here, so and so. If you're telling this story, the people sitting in the audience listening to you know he's not really important to the story. If you're a Monty Python fan, this is Sir not appearing in this film. He's just a guy, and it's a thing I've only seen one other time. This such and such, but it's a reminder to us of the way this story was told for hundreds of years.
And remember, it was told orally for 300 years, they believe.
Give or take, yeah.
Until it was written down.
But we'll say one other thing.
Yeah.
If they did give his name, if the story contained the guy's name, people would go out into the histories, into the thing, and try and figure out who he is and know everything about the other Goel, and they speculate all the stuff that humans do. By calling him so-and-so, it just shuts all that down. He's not important.
Then Boaz took 10 of the elders of the city and said, sit here, and they did so. I'm going to stop at that one sentence. Why 10?
There is a thing in Hebrew custom law called a minyan, M-I-N-Y-A-N, and it's the minimum number to have a synagogue service, and officially, I guess it's not exactly sanctioned, but to have a synagogue and a proper service, you need a minyan. It's like a quorum, and it's 10 men. After someone dies, like we knew someone in Israel
Right.
that his father died, and you go to the synagogue and sit on stools with 10 men, and it's just part of their custom.
Every day,
But
right?
but the fact that there are 10 of them present, Boaz goes to great care to be sure a quorum is present, because what he's about to do, he's going to make official. And you can't make it official unless there's a minyan, unless there's a quorum. And Boaz is doing everything by the book.
And he said to the kinsman redeemer, Naomi, who has returned from the land of Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our brother Elimelech. I thought I should inform you that you may buy it back in the presence of those seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you want to redeem it, do so. But if you will not redeem it, tell me so I may know, because there is no one but you to redeem it, and I am next after you. I will redeem it, he replied.
And so, as we said last week, this is a nearer relation than Boaz. He's the only one that's a nearer relation, but he has the right of
It says brother, but it doesn't.
It doesn't mean brother. I mean, that's a term that it's often used, but it means he's a close relative. He's one of us. And so this guy has the claim on the land to redeem it, to purchase it. And the idea behind that is to always keep the land in the family, keep it in the clan. And Boaz clearly doesn't want that to happen. Is there anybody who read this even for the first time that thought it's going to come out the wrong way? We're supposed to, as the story is being told, but what Boaz does is say, hey, Naomi is going to sell this land. She has no choice. And you're the nearest relative. You're the Goel with the closest claim. You can redeem it. Well, back then, it's an agrarian society. These guys always wanted more land. Land is what makes you wealthy. If you're willing to work, it's the land. And the way it works is the land belongs to God. What they own is the use of the land. And that's how all of this redemption thing works. And so he says, hey, Naomi he's called him over and he says, Naomi's got this land. And if you want to redeem it, you're the guy with the senior claim. Now, if you don't want to, I'll take it. I'll redeem it. And the guy immediately says, oh no, I mean, some more land, of course I'll redeem it.
Then Boaz said, on the day you buy the land from Naomi, and also from Ruth the Moabitess, you must also acquire the widow of the deceased in order to raise up the name of the deceased of his inheritance. The kinsman redeemer replied, I cannot redeem it myself, or I would jeopardize my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption, because I cannot redeem it.
So we don't know exactly. There's so much speculation on this. The inheritance laws are so complicated. Maybe the guy's already got children, and maybe he's worried because what the idea here is the Redeemer, the first son born, it belongs to it. It keeps the name of the dead husband going. It keeps his line going so that he's not lost to Israel. And so he's just told him, you can get the land. Oh, but by the way, the moment you do, you also need to redeem Ruth, his widow, to actually not Elimelech's, but the heir's widow, to keep his line, keep Elimelech's line going. It's kind of weird. It's not an absolute requirement for this guy to do that. But the way Boaz has done it in front of all these people, the guy would be a real heel if he didn't do it. And he says, now I don't know, so because this would cause problems with my line and my inheritance. He says, I better not do that. You go ahead. If it's not underhanded, but it is certainly calculated. Boaz presented it this way so that the guy immediately jumps on the land, and he says, oh, by the way, you wouldn't want to do this without taking care of the family, the widows, and everything else, right? So the moment you say yes, before you go through with this, just know you also should be taking care of the widows in the process. And he knows what effect that's going to have.
There was a thought that he could, like you said, the other kinsman redeemer could say, no, I just want the land, and that would have been legally acceptable, but it wasn't socially.
The brothers are required to do it, and there are a couple of places in the Old Testament where brothers don't take up their duty.
We'll talk about one of them today.
And yeah, we can talk about one a little bit later. And it is an offense to God. They are supposed to do this. That's the way it's written in the law. But in this case, the Goel doesn't actually have to do it. So Boaz, being who he is, what's important to him is making sure that Naomi and Ruth are taken care of. If this guy had said yes, Boaz already said, if he'll do it, I'm fine with that, because at least I know you're taken care of. And it's obvious that he would prefer that the other guy doesn't.
Now, in former times in Israel, concerning the redemption or exchange of property, to make any matter legally binding, a man would remove his sandal and give it to the other party. And this was a confirmation in Israel. So the kinsman redeemer removed his sandal and said to Boaz, buy it for yourself.
And it may sound strange, I don't know if any of you remember, there are these customs. When Bush Jr. went to the Middle East, you remember, right? The guy threw his shoe at him, and this is considered a big insult. They're customs. He threw both shoes, is that what you said? Yeah. But in this case, they don't have written contracts. They have these 10 witnesses, but there's always a possibility that somebody is going to say, that wasn't a real contract. I've rethought things, and I really want that land. This passing of the sandal is a way of saying the deal is done, no backs, you have the right now to redeem the land, and accordingly, Ruth, the widow, the passing of this sandal cements the contract between the two.
And the big thing you were saying is that Boaz followed the rules. I mean, this is someone who's doing it the right way.
Yeah, he has made sure, and he doesn't have to do all this. Boaz is just a good guy.
At this, Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "You are witnesses today that I am buying from Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. Moreover, I have acquired Ruth the Moabitess, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, to raise up the name of the deceased through his inheritance, so that his name will not disappear among his brothers or from the gate of his home. You are witnesses today." Importance of witnesses way back then.
Yep, I talk, periodically about the importance of witnesses in Jewish law, and it's a concept that comes up over and over again. But what he's saying is, I'm acquiring this land and Ruth, the Moabite wife, to carry on, to raise up the line of Elimelech, our brother, our relative, and keep it in their family, keep all of this. He doesn't have to do it. And everyone there would know that. Everyone would understand this guy is doing something truly exceptional just for the widows, just for also for the line of Elimelech. He's redeeming the land specifically to give it back to the family, the descendants of Elimelech who died.
And so the elders in the crowd say, "We are witnesses," said the elders and all the people at the gate. "May the Lord make the woman entering your home like Rachel and Leah, who together build up the house of Israel. May you be prosperous in," how do you say that? That word?
Oh, Ephrathah.
Ephrathah, "and famous in Bethlehem. And may your house become like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because the offspring of the Lord will give you because of the offspring the Lord will give you by this young woman." So there's a bunch of people in here that if someone was like reading scripture in a church and doing a sermon, you'd miss the importance of them. So we've got Rachel and Leah, and we've got Perez and Tamar.
So Jacob, way back there, after he steals the birthright from his brother, has to run off. And he goes to a distant land, and it's actually a relative, but he sees the daughter, Leah, Rachel, and just falls head over heels in love with her. And eventually he has the courage to tell Laban, the father, I want to marry your daughter, your younger daughter. And Laban is a smart guy, and he says, well, come and work for me for 7 years, and I'll give her to you. And the 7 years is up, and he tricks him, and he gives him the older daughter, Leah. And Jacob says, what have you done to me? And he says, well, it's not our custom to marry off the younger daughter first. So if you want to work for me another 7 years, I'll let you have Rachel also. These two Gentile women wind up being the mothers of Israel. They're Gentile women, and yet it's their offspring. They're responsible for the tribes, and they're saying, may you be as fruitful, may this, your wife, may your lineage be as fruitful as what Rachel and Leah did by multiplying Israel, by making them a large nation. And then later, then he mentions Tamar. Now, here's the odd thing. Judah, and you all know about the tribe of Judah, the Lion of Judah. David's descended from Judah. Jesus is descended from Judah. Judah has a son, and he goes and finds a wife for her, and her name is Tamar, and she's also a Gentile girl. And the oldest son dies. I don't get into all the details. And the younger son, the next son, is supposed to take her for a wife, and he doesn't want to mess up his inheritance. And so he cheats, and he doesn't have a son to carry on the older brother's line. And he dies. And now there's a third, younger son who's too young. And Judah says, I've already lost 2 sons to this. I know I'm supposed to give her my youngest son for a husband, but I don't really want to do it. And he sends her home. But what winds up happening is Tamar has a child with Judah himself. She tricks him. The point is, here's another point in this lineage that it's a Gentile woman who winds up famously carrying on this tribe of Judah through her children. She has twins by him, but it's this concept of the Gentiles who have always been a part of the plan, always. And so now here we have again Ruth, who came from Moab, and she winds up, and we're going to see why she's so important. But it's funny how this lineage, we see things, pop up through there where the Gentiles are actually part of the line, part of the royal line, if you think of it that way.
And what made me think about all this stuff, all of this is really messed up, you guys. I mean, all of these stories are really messed up, and anybody, Scott's sister and I always talk about how we always wanted the Waltons, we wanted the perfect family, and we pretend we have them. There's never a perfect family. I mean, all of these things are messed up, you guys.
Life is messy, and one of the things about Ruth, it is so full of humanity. It is an acknowledgement that this is a messy place to live, and we have to contend with these situations that are just not that cut and dried. And what we're going to see is there's actually one more connection. There's actually one more Gentile woman in this lineage.
We'll get there in a second. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And when he had relations with her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. Then the women said to Naomi.
Can I
Yes.
go ahead and mention one thing?
Yeah.
This is a place where that's a good translation. There's nothing wrong with it. But we miss stuff by not going into the Hebrew version of it. What the Hebrew actually says is that Boaz slept with her and gave Yahweh her conception. I want you to think about that. Gave Yahweh her conception. This is an understanding that this child is a gift from God, that this whole situation, and the way they viewed it was, as I say, gave Yahweh her conception, gave God credit for that, and he's a part of this in their minds from the beginning. And when the story was being told, and being told in Hebrew, that was recognized. This is baked into their thinking.
Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a kinsman redeemer. May his name become famous in Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons has given him birth." And Naomi took the child and placed him on her lap and became a nurse to him. The neighbor woman said, "A son has been born to Naomi," and they named him Obed. He became the father of Jesse, the father of David.
It seems confusing. I keep telling you, anytime you deal with the Jews, it's complicated. But the idea a son has been born to Naomi. But we talk about, and the women's role, in some ways, you can see that this isn't equitable, this isn't fair. They don't inherit the property. But their role is very, very important in this society. Very important. And this idea of carrying on the line, we learned in Israel, how do you know if someone is a Jew or not? And the answer is, they're a Jew if their mother is a Jew. That's automatic. Not the father, the mother. The mothers wind up teaching the children up until they hit that age that we call bar mitzvah. It's the mothers who school them in all of this stuff. And so Naomi's job, her importance in this, carrying on the line, when her husband dies and her 2 sons die, she is it's almost a shame, but it's a very, very difficult thing in that she hasn't carried on this line. And the women look at this and they see the way all of this complicated stuff goes, that this child is carrying on the line of Elimelech. It is a blessing to Naomi. And they actually say, a son has been born to Naomi, and that seems strange to us. It didn't seem strange to them. It is a blessing to Naomi. And she does mention, you have this daughter-in-law who's better to you than 7 sons. We know you don't have sons anymore, but what she's done for you is an amazing thing. And the women actually name the child. It's the only time we ever see this. The only time. Normally, it's the mother. Every now and then, the dad gets by with it. You never see anyone else name a child. It's not even kind of supposed to happen. But what there is within this village, within Bethlehem and the tribes, is an understanding that this child is something special. Obed means servant of God. And they have named him. It's sort of like he almost belongs to all of them. But this is this recognition that God's hand is at work, and this is a special child. And it's the one and only time that a child is named by the people of the village.
And obviously that last son, a son has been born to Naomi, and they named him Obed. He became the father of Jesse, the father of David.
And so here, this is, amazing. He is this Obed, and obviously Boaz are direct forefathers of King David. And David is just right around the corner from this. It's not that many years later. But what you don't know from reading Ruth, and we learn in Matthew 1.
Well, we're going to read this last part here first?
Well, we can go ahead. But Matthew goes into the lineage of Jesus. Obviously, Jesus is descended from David, which means he's also descended from Obed, who's descended from Boaz. But what we learn is Boaz is the son. Got to tell the story, I guess.
Yes.
When the Jews came into the promised land, they sent spies. They sent some people in to go scout it out and see how it was going to go. And 2 of them went to Jericho. And Jericho is a walled city. And they sneak in. Word gets out, there are 2 Jewish spies in town. And they're looking for them everywhere to kill them. There's a prostitute named Rahab. Rahab takes these 2 spies into her house, into her home, and hides them. And she says, I know this land already belongs to the Jews. We've all heard how your God led you across the Red Sea, dried up the waters for you. We've heard how all along the way he delivered you in battles that you probably shouldn't have won. We see that your God is the one God, and he is with you. So this land belongs to you. I'm doing this for you because I want your assurance that when you come back with all your people and take the land, you'll be good to me and to my family. And they agree. And she actually lowers them out her window outside the wall, and they get away. Rahab, the prostitute, is Boaz's mother. Boaz, the one who, marries Ruth, is the son of a Gentile prostitute. And this is this is in the same lineage of Jesus. And you think, if you were going to invent a religion, chances are you wouldn't invent something where one of the fairly near, great-grandmothers is a Gentile prostitute. It's messy. And yet, it comes back to, you see Jesus, you see the way he was with women, you see the way he was with outsiders, you see the way he was, with people, sinners, And you see this in the lineage. It is an amazing thing. And yes, we are supposed to get that from this story. This is a part of the lineage of Jesus, an important part. And the really landmark matriarchs are all Gentile women. Yeah.
The other thing, it is such a puzzle, and that's why, are you finished with this book yet? No. I mean, you have to go back over and over it, because this last part, which I'm going to have you read here because it's a whole bunch of names I'll screw up, is, it says here that Boaz, the father of Boaz was Salom. Is that how you say his name? And so here you wouldn't know anything about Rahab. To find out that Salome married Rahab, you have to go to Matthew. And so it's all consistent, but you find out pieces of the puzzle from different parts of the Bible, whether it's from the Old Testament or the New Testament.
We get this image that Jews and Arabs always fight with each other. If they're in the same county, there's going to be a battle. And it's just not true. They're within Israel, there are minarets from mosques, and they light up green at dusk. They're all over the place. Back in one of the 6-Day War, one of those, the Jewish families took Arab families into their homes. They're neighbors, and they said, "You guys are at risk because we're at war with these Arab nations. We don't want anything happening to you." They took their neighbors in. There were back then there were clans that were mixed. It's just never as cut and dried as what you're led to believe. And so you remember I told you about Tamar, that she winds up having this son or two sons by Judah, the twins. One of those is Perez. So in this lineage at the end of Ruth, it says, now these are the generations of Perez. That's the older twin born to Tamar. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron was the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Aminadab. Aminadab was the father of Nahshon. Nahshon was the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz. And remember, he's the one married to Rahab, the prostitute. Salmon was the father of Boaz. Boaz is the father of Obed, who we just learned about. Obed was the father of Jesse, and we know Jesse was the father of David. We have this lineage that goes back, and that's part of what makes this story, this book, beautiful, is that it contains within it all of these people that are the lineage of Jesus. They wouldn't know that at the time they were telling this story and the time they wrote it. They see as the progenitors of King David, as this is an amazing thing that has happened. And yet we know now that down through that same lineage, generations later, comes the Redeemer. All the redeeming that's done in this story, through that same lineage comes the Redeemer, the Messiah. And they had no idea when they were saying this that was going to be the result.
What else do you have to add? You're early.
We are early. I don't know. We may wind
I'm
up.
a little concerned, not concerned. It bothers me a little bit that historically, I don't know what kind of instructions the Jewish mothers would give to their sons about intermarriage. Sometimes we hear about, she's not a good Jewish girl.
Yes.
And we've got a line here that's pretty missing. And then we don't have any formal ceremony of these Gentile women becoming Jews, and they're going to be Jews, and you're a Jew, and your mom's Jew. So it's not only messy, it's what happens to the boys, what instructions do they get that would allow and permit this type of intermarriage?
It's messy, Gene, and that's part of the message of this, really. The one thing that you should probably take from this, because we see it through Jesus' ministry so much. What's important is the heart. And we're told numerous times that circumcision, what even Paul gets into, a circumcision of the heart. You remember after Jesus is ascended and he's gone, the Jewish believers insist that Gentiles have to be circumcised in order to believe and to be what we call Christian, to be members of this belief in Jesus, in the Messiah. And the message there was, that's not what circumcision was. That was it was a sign, obviously, but Paul talks about a circumcision of the heart. Technically, Boaz, because his mother is a Gentile prostitute, is not eligible. Certainly, he couldn't have ascended and become a prince or something, a leader, because of his lineage. But it's never that cut and dried. And the message that Jesus gave over and over is, what's important is the heart. And when you look at Ruth,
When did she become a Jew?
when did she become a Jew? I've talked about this. It's at the moment that she declares, your people will be my people. Where you live, I'll live. Where you die, I'll die. And your God will be my God. And she knows who Yahweh is at this point. And at that moment, and what you see in this, we always get this picture. We get pushed this picture that the Jews are very, very rigid. But in a case like this, we see them say, well, if she says that Yahweh is her God and they accept her. It is a very messy lineage. You're correct. I see in that people living in this place, we live in a world that is messy. And the idea of, judging people by their actions is a little dangerous. Because if someone judges me by my actions, I'm sort of in trouble. And yet the heart, what God sees, what God judges by, and I'm not trying to excuse any behavior at all. It's just that we see through this whole line, and then from Jesus, that it is the heart.
Well, and this intermarriage stuff, what Jean was saying, marry a good Jewish girl, that would still be the message, because it's more difficult not to marry a prostitute Gentile or to marry a Moabitess. It's not as easy. Does it mean that Ruth can't be a Jew? No.
More important than being a Jew, even, again, is her heart. But one of the things I've said in this class is there's always a way home. There's always a way back. And so if marrying a Gentile is not the best way to do things, God doesn't cut you off. There are times where people stray out into things and we see that, he says enough. I'm not qualified to even comment. But through a lot of this stuff, we do things. And God doesn't quit dealing with us. He doesn't cut us off. Sometimes there are consequences. And we see through these stories, a lot of the time there are consequences. Way back at the beginning, they left Israel and go to Moab. Were there consequences? Maybe. But out of that comes this incredible, marvelous, story that becomes part of the lineage of Jesus himself. God works all things together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And these things are demonstrations of that. So is it ideal that someone doesn't marry another good Jewish girl? Probably not. And yet, now what does God do with us? Does he cut us off? Does he say that's the end? And what I keep seeing is evidence, no, he doesn't. We probably should look for the way home. We should look for the way back and go in search of. But he makes provision to not cut his people off from him. That's what I think.
And one more. Historically, this lineage that we see here from Paris, it sounds to me like it's an add-on to the story.
It must be. It must be.
So, do we know anything about how does that paragraph get in here?
It's a really good question, and it should be pretty obvious that at the time this was going on, they didn't know who the descendants were going to be.
They didn't know Obed. They knew Obed was born, but they didn't know that Obed was going to become Jesse's father and that there was going to be a King
The
David.
progenitor of David. They
Right.
could, so someone added this,
And that's why you know it was written down 300
That's,
years later.
that's right. That's part of how we know it was written down much later. We don't know exactly who added it. But that obviously was added. But it would have been this amazing story already. And then after it had been told, everyone's eyes get big and they go, oh my gosh, this wonderful, occurrence, this great story turns out to also be the lineage of our, patriarch, King David. It's an amazing thing. It's a good question. I have no answer.
That's the meat of all of this.
Yes.
And I kind of felt like I was cheating, looking at the answer first and then taking on the question. Because if I had just read up until it stops, Naomi took the son and David, still that wouldn't lead me to all this lineage and the uncertainty of all this lineage. But now you get it. I mean, they spoon feed you. They feed you with a spoon.
It is, as I said, it was already amazing. This was something they were proud of. This is something that, and the women of the city knew. This is, we named him Obed, servant of God, and we named this child. He is something special in our midst, and they still didn't have a clue. That's only, all of those people were long dead by the time David comes along. And then people look at this and say, and we keep seeing that down through the generations, down through the millennia, we keep looking at things and going, oh my gosh, it's the same thing with Daniel, those prophecies. We look at those and go, well, that's pretty amazing. And then when you find out what it really entailed, this is a pretty amazing, series of events. But no, you're dead on. They wouldn't have known.
So we are done with this study. We're going to do 1st and 2nd Timothy starting next week. And like I said, and I will also put out some dates to see when we can do the Passover meal in mid-April.
Did Mary send you a copy of the picture that I of the bird
Early
with
on,
with
at
the
the beginning of
wings?
the study.
I'll send another copy out this week. I want you to see it. It's a picture that I took of a bird with wings sort of encircling, and it reminded me so much. One of the things I would love if you take with you out of this study is that word kanaf. It comes in 2 times in this story. First, when he tells Naomi that, he tells Ruth, Boaz tells Ruth, God whose wings you've come under, whose kanaf, whose care you've come under. And then when she's on the threshing floor, she says, spread your kanaf over me. And it is for your, that's the marriage proposal. But this garment is, again, to indicate to take someone into this embrace, to take them under your care. I'll send you a copy of the picture. I love the picture, but it is this image of the encircling arms of God, the same way that a mother, bird will take the chicks under her arm. That's an image of our relationship with God that I hope you can take out of this study of Ruth.
How do you spell that?
Kanaph, kanaf. And it's intended for us to get that on those 2 different things, that Ruth is coming under Boaz's protection and care, but it's the same word, the same concept, and it's used a few other times in the Old Testament, and it always has to do with God embracing us, with God encircling us with arms of protection and care. It's a good message to get out of the story. God, we are amazed when we see the plan, the care that you've given, the stories that go on for so many generations that we're not aware of as they're happening. And we know that you're at work in this place. We understand that, and at times we can see it, but we trust that while we may be in the middle of the stories, we aren't always given the sight of how important these times are. But we do feel your embrace, we feel your care, and we trust you, that we know that you are watching over it, that you are a part of this place, and we're thankful for it. Be with us this week and give us that reminder as we look at this place around us. Amen.
Man, you guys can unmute yourself. How are you doing, Julie? And how's Colin?
Colin is doing better and better. He still has a bad cough though, so appreciate keeping him in your prayers. But he's out of the hospital and breathing much better. So
There you go. And David, are you taking care? Take care of yourself.
yes.
Okay.
I'm doing just fine. Just got about 60 days here, so we're watching everything.
There you
So
go.
appreciate you guys.
Kay, where are you located? Where are you?
I'm in League City.
Where?
League City.
League City?
Between Houston and Galveston.
I know where League City is. It's always nice. Sometime maybe you can make your way down to Rockport and we can meet you. It would be neat, but it's good to have you with us. Yep. What's that? Good
That would be
fishing out there,
nice.
yeah. And Julie, I wanted to tell you that cough. Our Julie has not been able to, she's got this bronchitis thing, and she's got antibiotics and inhalers and all this stuff, and she just can't shake it.
And she tested positive for COVID, and she had COVID. She's negative for COVID now, but she still can't get rid of the cough.
I use the Ricola sugar-free lemon little drop.
Cough drop?
They kick it. They kick the cough. You know, every
Really?
time I lay down, it seems like cough is back. And I'll put one of those in my mouth, and it kicks the cough.
All right, I know where I'm going when before I go
Julie's getting
home.
some
And
too.
they're sugar-free. They're sugar-free. The lemon mint, I think, and they're sugar-free.
sugar-free
Ricola.
We'll try it.
There you
All right.
go. Okay, thank you guys.
Bye-bye, Jackie. Jack, good to see you.
Bye, Cheryl.
you
Talk
too.
to you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.